All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. You are joining us for the portion of the evening known as Novi After Dark. This is Lex Talk About It. Tonight's topic, we are talking about world building. We are talking about world building, both in like tabletop and in like fiction and things like that. What the different processes look like and how you get started. My guests tonight in this conversation are Nathan Gutowski.
Whoa.
Joe and Gaylan joining us. And I have Layne here. Layne, I think everybody at the table tonight is a DM somewhere.
Yep.
Like I have DM'd a couple of things. Nate is a resident DM here on Novi. Layne is a DM here, as you saw earlier in stream, and we have things coming from both Layne and Joe in the future. And exciting stuff. So without further ado, like, let's get into it. So like, what was the first system that you kind of fell in love with and thought, oh, this is a system that I want to play in, like that I want to like build things in?
That's a difficult question, because if we're talking about the first system I really really fell in love with, it would be Monster of the Week.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking love Monster of the Week. It's a really simple system, but like the character depth and like roleplay you can get out of it is fucking incredible. I'm a very much story, not mechanics person, and Monster of the Week just lends itself to that so much. The first thing I even kind of suggested as to run for Novi was Monster of the Week.
Yeah.
Just because I love it so much. And I was like, yeah, I've got this campaign planned out. There's one that kind of fell through that I never got to run for a home game. And I was like, well, if I put like a lot more effort into it and I can like actually like really seriously plan it out and get good role players in, I will run it for the studio. And it got the green light. So we're still working behind the scenes on that. And I'm probably working behind the scenes 6 or 7 times harder to make it as good as I can.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I'm super excited to get to be a part of it. I fell in love with the Monster of the Week system the first time we played it together. And I love that the world building aspect of Monster of the Week is somewhat collaborative. Like, you as the DM kind of present it, but then we play within it, and you know, we kind of bend and mend and mold things together as a play group.
Yep.
What about you guys? What about Joe and Gaylan?
The first one I ever DM'd for, and that pretty much made me fall in love with all of it, was Hero Quest in the setting of Glorantha, which is an amazing system that is mostly story and very less mechanics. And the joke between my group of friends is that Hero Quest was made by mythologists. And so like it's all story. And so it was so much fun to have this super concrete and definitive world with abstract, on purpose by the creators, details about it. So like they would write tons of books, resource books and stuff, but also like it would be kind of vague, because that's the idea, is like 2 groups of people separated by a group of mountains, the same information transfers to them in a different way. So it's really up to the storyteller to make everything and make it real. And so we've got the myths, the stories, and some basic information about the actual setting that made it so beautiful and fun to play it.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I've never heard of Heroes Quest, so that's really cool. I like hearing about it.
It's older, and they've gone through a couple different editions from the 80s all the way to now.
Mm-hmm.
Really fun.
What about you, Joe?
So I'm the baby GM is probably how I should put it. I feel like I'm still brand new to tabletop gaming specifically.
Yeah.
Just because growing up and teenager and undergrad and everything, I wanted to have the tabletop experience. Loved the idea of D&D. But then I had okay, Diego. I had the unfortunate experience of just a lot of game masters that were the cliche and
like gatekeepy.
Yes, that having modern language. Yes, very much gatekeeping, and I never really made it more than 3 sessions in like these various games and worlds, and so I was just like, man, this sucks. Okay, and then I was also in a relationship for a very long time who made fun of tabletop gamers, and I was just like, I will stay silent until I left him, and so the first system I ever GM'd was RuneQuest / Hero Quest for a bunch of kids, and this insane idea, and like pulled it off, and I came out of that going, I don't know what I just did.
Great.
I mean, the kids had fun, and so success. But as a game master, I was like, I don't know what I just managed to do. So I feel intimidated by his favorite system. I'm like, yeah, no. I adore Cypher system.
Okay. Talk to me about that. Tell me about that. Pokedex
It's instead of like the classic D&D thing where you have the stats and you fill it up with the numbers and then that's where your power comes from. You have a sentence and you have your noun, your verb, and your adjective. And those 3 things are what make you up and give you your powers. And everything kind of flows off of this one sentence. So much fun. So, yeah.
What lit professor made this system?
It's made by Monty Cook.
I don't know who that is.
I mean, that company's written so many books, like The Best Game Ever, and like they're a big company now. And it's super fun.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, one thing to know about me is what's funny is like I kind of got thrown into GMing because like my introduction to role play was long form role play, like written role play, was my introduction to it, first in one-on-one and then in like group settings, which was very interesting. And Discord coming around kind of changed the game because suddenly you could do things like you would in like a forum, but it's much more easy and you don't have to worry about the coding and like everything can be very specific, but like that's for a different episode. But like, so like I come from like that, like that's where I came from. And then I kind of found tabletop and then I only got to play like a couple of games here and there. I was introduced by my friend Sam, and then it got to, I was looking for people to play with again. And it was like, well, a bunch of us were looking for people to play with. And we had all been in like group long form RPs together. And so we were like, okay, why don't we just do one? And they were like, Lex, you'd be the DM. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I kind of like, it's come from that. And yeah, like I super like it. I am still figuring out what my favorite system to play in is. D&D is probably the most intimidating because I'm not even looking at Pathfinder. Like, no, I've never even been a player.
He talked about Pathfinder all the time, and he's like, "You'd have so much fun." And I'm like, and that's a lot of stats and numbers. And Harn.
So my initial like step into tabletop RPGs, a friend tried to get me into tabletop RPGs with Pathfinder. That's not a beginner system. No. You do not throw someone into a tabletop RPG with Pathfinder. It took me 6.5 hours to make my first character.
Yeah.
That sounds fast, though. Yeah. I'm thinking of the Harn characters that... All right, no.
Well, I mean, I agree. My father loves Pathfinder, so I grew up with Pathfinder. And now with D&D 5e, like I can see exactly what they did. They want people to be able to jump right into the system. So they narrowed it down and made it a good little nugget. And we're like, at this point, I can help a kid make a character in 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
6 hours.
And
like,
I'm a part of and we talked about this. I'm a part of a Discord that is a bunch of just tabletop RPGers. And a bunch of them, like, we're all like friends tangentially, and so like we've developed kind of a friend group. But that doesn't matter. But we were talking about this, and we were talking about, the differences between like 5e and 3.5 and the kind of assumptions that are made. And basically like 5e and all of the supplemental stuff that is coming out now are mostly efforts at being better. Like, they're not fully in good faith, because a lot of the books that just came out from Wizards of the Coast that boasted Black, Indigenous, people of color writers and stuff like that, like we had all these writers and stuff, and then these books come out and the writers come out and say, you changed what I wrote. Like, that's not what I wrote.
One of the things that got me about Tasha's Cauldron, one of the most recent books that came out, was they said they'd be bringing like, okay, we're going to really look at a lot of the like racial issues that are like very apparent to even like outside people in the games, and we're going to like really give you a system to go forward to like combat it, and that system to combat it end up homebrew it. Just homebrew it. You can do it, right?
Yeah.
And it's not improved past there.
Right. It literally just was like a passage that said, blah, blah, blah. We recognize the problem, blah, blah, blah. We're in an age where you make your own world, and that's the beauty of D&D. Like, blah, like just basically like fix it yourself. But that was kind of the whole point of 5e when you really like step back and look at Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It is something that is intentionally geared towards homebrews, and like it is something that recognizes all of the standing lore and all of the standing supplementals and modules are great or whatever, but they're intimidating. So let's give you a version of the game that lends itself to you and your friends making your shit up, because y'all are doing that anyway. And that's kind of what 5e looks like. Like, that's what it looks like to me, at least. And that's what we were talking about on the Discord, is how 5e differs, and how Pathfinder doesn't really usually lend itself towards homebrewing.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
Yeah.
A lot of what on that sort of note, like 5th edition to me it very much feels like they're trying to keep the old guard intact, with a lot of like the books and like splash materials being all set in like older areas like Forgotten Realms, Sword Coast, etc., etc. And they don't know how to get out of that old guard mindset.
It feels like they don't want it feels like they just don't want to like lose and alienate the people the gatekeepy people, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels like they don't want to alienate the old guard. Like they know that like the game has moved beyond them, but they're also still like not trying to lose them.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes to the point where if they take out, say, or if they take out like a paragraph saying all elves with dark skin are evil, if they take that out, there will be a 8 million page thread on Reddit, and it'll fucking make national news somewhere. Like that's awful.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. And like I don't even think it's ever I have the guide right here, but like I don't think it's I know that it's stated that the Drow face a lot of prejudice, but like I don't think it states that they themselves actually are inherently evil.
It does.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah, it does. It literally says, like, I think in both the player handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, that all Drow are inherently like predisposed towards evil. There are a few good ones, and in Forgotten Realms they are very rare. There is like 2.
Got you.
Talk to your DM if you want to play a good one.
I think they go so far as to even say like they are the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, they literally say like good Drow are as rare as diamonds. It's something like that. It's like, this is awful. Why would you do this?
That's racism. And let's not even get started on fucking orcs.
Yeah, -2 intelligence because you're tribal. Yeah, not touching that. That's literally what they say.
I know. Trust me.
I mean, it's part of that, like the mention of orcs being so inherently evil that made it so that was something I really wanted to challenge with Lanamora in that world. But with regards to like my intro to DMing and game mastering and all of that, I started with 3.5 D&D.
The mathiest.
I'm sorry.
Maths.
Yeah. It was
3.5 is math. Like,
I very much enjoyed it. I think I like math a lot more than I know.
I think you fucking do. Because even in your art, like you fucking did like metal sculpture, which is a lot of like knowing when it's at this temperature and what it like no, like you're doing math the whole fucking time.
Listen, there's a whole thing that I could talk about steel forging and the colors. And it's not math, but it is math because you're looking at colors.
Yes. Sorry.
And it's like chemistry and physics.
Okay.
Yes. I very much enjoyed my blacksmithing days.
3.5 is super mathy. Like,
so I started with 3.5. That's actually what I was playing when I at the inception of the world of Lanamora. And so like when I drew my first map, I was working on a campaign for 3.5. And then I stopped because all of our friends wanted to party instead of play D&D. It was like an 8-person party. And so we stopped playing D&D, much to my chagrin. And I started looking at other systems. You know, with Emily, we went to Gen Con a few times and I picked up Hollow Earth Expedition, which I was really excited to get into and play. Never ended up doing. And then by the time, 5th edition rolled around, like 2 or 3 years after it came out, got together with Nova and Nicole and just started playing a 5th edition campaign from one of the source books and said, all right, well, I've got this world. Let's give this a go, huh? And that's why we have a podcast now.
So simple. So straightforward.
All because my friends wanted to drink. That's why we're here now.
Incredible. So why did you start DMing? Why were you not just a player?
I wanted to play. No GMs are available. so I did my own shit. That's literally it.
Yeah.
That's the same for me, I think.
I got offered money to run kids through games and was told, like, you'll be fine. Like, but I've never done it. You'll be fine. And I've been doing it ever since.
So the same person who did that to him
did that to you.
Yeah. Oh, you do tabletop games? I mean, I have in the past, so you know what they're like. I know what Dungeons and Dragons is like. Like, oh no, it'll be fine. Here's this 3-inch spiral-bound self-printed book. Learn the system and do it for kids. Come in on Fridays, you'll get extra hours. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Oh,
and the thing is like I love these games, and I love the fact that there are organizations out there that are teaching these games to kids, because like these games teach you important things. Like they teach you very real important life skills, both math, teamwork, emotional honesty. Like, here's the thing, because like, yeah, you're playing a game and you're sitting around and you're playing these characters, but like when it's not real anymore, and I'm sure somebody else has said this, I'm sure somebody else has said this and said it better, but like when you like let that drop away and it's not real anymore, you can let yourself like just feel it, because it, and the thing is also like your brain doesn't separate the emotions that you have about stories and fiction, that it does. Your brain doesn't separate those emotions from your emotions about stuff in your real life. So the emotions that you're experiencing during game are real, and you're letting yourself feel them more truly, because it doesn't feel like the stakes are as true. And so important things happen, and there's an important emotional education that happens at the table that you can take into your everyday life. And so I think it's really important that kids get introduced to these sorts of things.
When one of the characters in the game that I get to play in was going through like a really rough patch in game, I was fucking feeling it.
Yeah.
Like as she was going there and just these times were getting harder and harder, I said to the group, like, if it keeps getting like really bad for Idris, I'm going to have to take a week off of the game, because this is fucking me up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an episode of Legends where it was just rough on all of the players, and all 4 of them were just feeling down. It was during season 1. It was early on.
Oh, this is when you were still Village Idiots.
This is when we were still the Village Idiots. Yeah. So it's like episode 6 or 7 of the podcast, season 1, but they were just all super depressed. I did something well because that's where I wanted them to be, but you could feel it.
Oh man,
it was a somber session until we got to the point where I needed them there so I could get them here situation.
Mm-hmm.
It was bad. There have been a few other parts that have been like that, but usually only one character at a time.
Man, yeah, it's hard. It's hard when things like that happen at the table, because like it's real and you got to deal with it, and it's hard because it's like, man, I wanted to, and that's one of the things that like I think is really important, that you have a conversation with the people that are going to be sitting at your table about what they want out of a game, both like, you know, for things like disease or infection, like, because for most people, you know, when you're sitting down at a table, you want to like sling spells and clash swords, you're not trying to, you know, okay, roll for, you know, that cut that you got that you didn't attend to, roll to see how infected it is. Like, whoa, like if that isn't what somebody came to do, and then you bring that up at the table, it's like, I thought we were just doing, we're going there. And like some people want to do that and they want that experience, and that's great. Like, but you need to have that conversation, you know, as a GM and a player about, as a group, you know, about what do we want out of this? What are our goals going into this game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, something interesting that we both dealt with at the dojo, because the tabletop for the kids is at the dojo. It's the Friday night thing. For years, they also ran something that we call Adventure Quest, which is gateway drug to LARPing.
Isn't that a browser game? Adventure Quest?
So yeah, it was, and so there was a problem with us when we tried to, like, we were looking into branding it big, and immediately
y'all got a cease and desist.
Yeah,
kind of.
As long as we keep it small and just at the dojo, it's fine.
Yeah, if it's just ours, like our community running kids through summer things, like it's fine. But if we want to try to make it bigger, we got to change the name.
But what's fun about it is the kids have to actually do things to make their character stats. So they have to run laps and they have to throw things and they have to like do math and spelling problems to make the stats for their characters. And so they don't care what the long-term goal is. They want to run around and beat each other up with padded swords. But they all want to get better. And so there's like this fitness and knowledge goal that's like underscoring the entire thing. And they get like bonus points and
more than that.
Well,
no, so
this is incentivized. This is incentivized LARPing.
Oh yeah. So our main stats.
What a sentence. Incentivized LARPing.
So our main stats for it, and this was, I mean, on the same subject of world building, because we had this idea for a long arcing story that we could keep going in little 3-month chunks, where they were time traveling police force, and there was a group of
time cops.
Yeah, time cop.
ACAB.
And so there was a bad force of people who were stealing stories and pieces of history, and the kids were trying to stop them. And so the way you do that is you go back into a time period and you try to figure out what went wrong. So we start off the game, each 3-month chunk, with here's where we are in the time period, and we're just going to start freestyling it, or what we came up with. Mm-hmm. Where did it go wrong? And they're like, it went wrong here. Cool. What part do you have to go back a little bit further to fix it? And so their stats for everything was strength and agility, then knowledge and creativity, and then empathy.
Teamwork.
And like teamwork. And
empathy, put yourself in the place of me.
And so the idea is, as their characters grew, they had to get better. So like, you want to get stronger and do more damage, do more push-ups. You want to, be better at, like all of your spells and stuff, learn math facts. And the hardest one was the empathy. Like, you want to get better at like leadership and stuff like that. Like, you got to help that kid over there who's having a hard time. And so it was such a cool world to build and then make them actively interact with it on such a physical, real scale.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah.
But there was also sometimes the kids completely dropped everything about reality and they were
in it. No.
5,000% in it. Like, he literally has scars on his body from when the kids were like in it to kill someone, to defend their land, to take out this bridge, whatever. Like,
kids
holds barred nonsense. Like,
nobody commits like children. I'm a gig worker, and I do, party performance is one of the gigs that I do. And I had a stormtrooper party, and the mom bought Nerf guns, and there were lightsabers, and we had a Nerf gun battle. And I turn around, I am maybe 20 feet from this kid. as I turn around, I see he has like jumped and he is like coming down and comes down full force across another kid's face with this lightsaber. And these are not plastic collapsible lightsabers. These are like these sturdy, like combat grade lightsabers. So this poor little 8-year-old just got beamed across the face with a hard plastic. And he's trying so hard to like keep it together. He's just standing there holding his face, and like I have to remain in character, and so like I have to like, you know, get that kid to like go the fuck away, and the mom gets there before me because I can only move like like you can't fucking bend your knees, and listen, y'all, my thighs are very intimately involved with hard plastic at this point, and it's a problem.
You know, every single story just makes me more glad I can't have kids.
Dude, just don't book a stormtrooper for their fucking birthday. But this kid loved it. It was beautiful, but whatever. So like I'm like trudging over trying to get to this kid, and the mom gets there first, and he's like trying not to get off the field, and I'm like, no, like if you're injured you gotta leave the field of battle, it's fine. Like I'm having to do the whole fucking 9 yards, and the mom like commented on that when she talked to my boss later. She was like, no, they were incredible, they like this shit happened and they handled it in character, it was great, blah blah blah. But kids do that. Like kids get fully invested. They're the best people to have in your audience for like theater. They're the best people to like put on shows for. They're the best people to play fucking D&D with. But like they can't math. They can't.
No, they can't.
They can't. Which is why I like simpler systems.
That's why you play with gays.
Yes. Yes.
I rolled earlier for some damage, and I was struggling to count to 16. Okay,
listen, but that is you know, that is why I love simpler systems, like the World of Darkness systems. It's just D6s. But the World of Darkness worlds are very fucking rich, and there's so much there story-wise to do, but it does kind of lead you content-wise to do heavier material. Like there's not really like, oh, you know, we're picking up and doing just a fun little stupid campaign because we want to have a nice, fun, uplifting once a week game or once every other whatever, blah blah blah. Like that's hard to do in World of Darkness. There's a reason it's World of Darkness. But they do have really rich worlds. Vampire the Masquerade, Mage the Awakening,
Wraith the Oblivion,
Werewolf the Rage. Isn't it Werewolf the Apocalypse as well?
Yeah.
And Changeling the Dreaming, Changeling the Lost. But yeah.
Promethean.
Yeah. Oh fuck, I always forget about Promethean.
I've played Vampire, Wraith, and Changeling. I fucking hate Wraith. I despise Wraith.
Why? Why do you despise? I've never played it.
It's the main reason is the fact that it's kind of an unspoken rule in tabletops that the GM plays all the NPCs, right? Because they have greater narrative control over the world itself.
Yeah.
But in Wraith, the other players play your shadow. The GM does not do it. And I think that's fucked, to be honest.
What?
Because the GM creates the world and like works around it. They know what the world is. They know what's happening in the world. They know the rules the world works by. Unless your players are so like gelled together and well connected that they know everything about your character and how they're working, it's just not going to be in character unless the GM is doing it. If I have a character with like, okay, so the Wraith Oblivion one shot that I played, I basically played a cult leader in disguise who was just sacrificing people. But she came out of nowhere, and like you would never know that just from looking at her. Mm-hmm. So her shadow was like constantly offering her like the power that she sought through these cult sacrifices. But how the fuck would the other players know that? Yeah. How are they supposed to know that? And how are they supposed to interact with that and put it in a way that would make sense to my character without knowing about her?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, not a fan of that. Yeah. Although I don't imagine that that's one of their highest selling games.
Barely hear anyone talk about it.
No, yeah. I think Vampire is probably by far their most popular. I think secondary is probably Changeling.
I'd probably say Werewolf at this point.
Werewolf has gotten a lot more popular.
Yeah.
And I do like them. And technically all of them are canon to one another. Mm-hmm. So you can play them together, but it breaks the system terribly.
I've tried to
because vampires are weak as shit. In the
vampires are weak as fuck. Vampires are weak as fuck. I'm sorry.
I thought it would be really fun to try to build a world where play whatever, and there's going to be this grand story connecting all of them. I'm still working on it.
Honestly,
they just can't figure it out.
Honestly, like mages are broken except for against a changeling. Like changeling and mages, like you're good, but like a mage against a werewolf, like a mage against a werewolf or a vampire, they're gonna win every time.
Yeah, like humans are the absolute bottom rung in World of Darkness. Then slightly above that is vampires, then werewolves, and then mage, changelings and shit are on a whole fucking other level. It's unreal.
And so basically it comes down to if you want to combine them, it becomes you have to kind of choose about whether or not you're doing like you can choose to combine two, right? So you can choose to combine like changelings and mages or vampires and werewolves, but anything else, there's this huge power imbalance. So it becomes like the mage carry, like if you have a mage, a changeling, and a vampire and a werewolf, then it becomes really incumbent on you as a GM to try to like bend this game so that the power imbalance isn't super obvious and felt by the people you're playing with.
Yeah, because at that point, you can a mage or a changeling just goes, I alter the world to my whim.
Mm-hmm.
How does a vampire deal with that? Like,
yeah, like if you have somebody with like fucking celerity 3 and potence and all that, they could, potentially blink behind them and snap their neck. But there's not a lot that a vampire can do against that. So you have to there's a lot to consider. But if you do it just straight up mages and changelings, you have a much easier time. Right. Because they're on much more equal footing. And that's potentially very interesting, especially if you're doing home brewing, which let's bringing us back to world building. Like how do you usually start in your worlds? And like that's a great place to start. Like are you usually like a conceptual build kind of person?
How do you mean starting? Like starting to build the world itself? Or?
Yeah, like what like when you I'm playing a game where we've decided we don't want to do a module.
Good. Fuck modules.
Right.
I don't mind them.
I do.
I can go either way with modules.
Well, I've got pampered with Pathfinder modules. Where they basically say by this point in the story they should be level blank. If not,
make it so
to get there. But like there's these waypoints. So taking that idea, I'm like, okay, make some waypoints throughout my stories and then go, okay, whatever. but I usually don't mind them.
So I just coming off of that, my world building for the world I'm currently running for the stream, the world of Est, kind of starts. I think I started it off by just thinking. I think I started off by thinking about the deities and like how each deity existed, how they came to be, etc., etc. The goddess of love and light, S, is the like how the world was named first off, and then I kind of started building it up by world events, so to speak. So if any of you lovely players, looking at you, Nathan, decide to go like hunting for world history or world events or lore behind the world, there's a lot of it, and you will find it out. And then I kind of tend to I try to anchor things in the like here and now and what's happened very recently in the world. So in the world of Est, there was very recently and I wrote this before 2020. I have to point this out. I wrote this far before 2020. The ascension of the goddess Seven, who is the goddess of plagues and diseases. She was basically working on a ultra plague and just unleashed it on a country. And that essentially changed world history forever. And from then on, that is the entire world, like history books have changed. The date system has changed. Almost everything's changed from around that point. And that's kind of where the players come in. It's now been 17 years since that. And it's kind of dealing with the aftermath of the effect that had on the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aside from that,
No, I'll let you finish your statement.
No, it's just like, aside from that, it's the smaller stuff that gets built up over time. And when I have ideas, quite frankly, if I just suddenly have an idea, I'll be like, oh, yeah, that goes in a t-shirt there.
Yeah.
When it came to creating Lanamora, it's the world, I played with the most, started in 2014 with it. It started as a specific adventure for the party that we had with everything in that old crew back from 7 years ago. And I kind of built the world around the specific quest. When I scrapped that quest, that's no longer a part of the world of Lanamora. And so when I came back to it, I kept the map because I was like, map's pretty dope. Got it. Let's just keep on keeping on. I actually recycled some names from it. What I started with when I started it back up is obviously because I had the world map. I was like, okay, well, here we go. Okay, well, all of the stuff that I drew in, what is this now? What makes this interesting? I kind of started in earnest around the time when Volo's Guide to Monsters came out in 5th edition. And so I got a lot of inspiration from that for specific things that I then had to immediately scrap because we decided to make it a podcast and I had to adhere to the SRD. So I couldn't do some of the stuff I wanted to do. But as far as the world building itself goes, for the story I want to tell, I have my central theme that I want to go through. And because we're doing, a more serial production of it, I have a long form goal that I have in mind. And so I've got like Gaylan said, you've got your roadmaps that you set down, like these are the points I want you to get to. And then I kind of let them fill in what they want. And as they're going, I'll fill in the important details. But I do have, other things that are happening outside and all of that I bring in when it's relevant. But ask me how often it's relevant.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to piggyback off of that. One of the things that I find people don't tend to realize is that they're playing in a living world.
Mm-hmm.
You are playing in a living world where other characters have their own motives. They are doing things in the background. And depending on what you do, what you say, like tiny little things will have butterfly ripple effects around the world.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially as speaking as a GM and world builder with intense ADHD, like the things, especially the things that would happen in a living game, in a living world, like, yeah, literally it's always like, oh, they made that decision back then and kind of moved on. I wonder what happened. Like, you as the GM start thinking, I wonder what happened to that town that they left after they just kind of ousted that bad leader and didn't do anything else. They just kind of killed him and left. What happened to that city? And like, you know, because you get those thoughts all the time, which is why I love RPGs that like give you epilogues at the end of the game, because like I have those thoughts all the time. And I think that's one of the best things is like your players do contribute a lot to your world. So like, how much do you decide beforehand? Like, do you decide a lot of the political and ideological and like cosmology stuff before you sit down to the table? Does some of that stuff get decided as you play? Like,
so
I mean,
I've been hogging shit. Go on.
For me, it depends on the story. Because like, so I love that you guys have worlds that you have built and like you keep playing them, and so you're making your world grow constantly. Beautiful to me. I haven't made that yet. I mainly take systems or other stories or systems that already have campaigns in them and kind of make my own based on what I'm feeling at that moment or that idea. And so I have a Google Doc, many Google Docs of just hundreds of pages of like, oh, this idea. Okay. And so it just depends. Since I run a lot of kids, I usually go ahead and let them fuck up and build the world around them. Yeah. Like I rarely have to make pre-made encounters.
Kids do it to themselves.
Because they just do it to themselves.
Oh yeah, 100%. Okay. Grown adults do it to themselves. Yeah. I'm sorry. Have you listened to Legends of Lanamora?
I was going to make the joke. I was going to say, ask me how I know.
I mean, when I'm a player, we done fucked up many times. Like,
oh my god,
it's no exception. It's just with the kids. I don't have to put a lot of my energy
into like making a fully fleshed out world.
Or not a fully fleshed out world. I actually do way too much than I'm supposed to. I don't have to make the conflict. Like I don't have to make the tiniest little details of, oh, they're going to meet this person and meet this person. I just have a list of some names, basic description of them, and they inevitably are like, we want to kill that guy. Like you do know he is not someone you want to fuck with. Oh, okay.
Even more of a reason.
You do want to fuck with them. Okay. And then that becomes their little side scene that they end up doing because they are inquisitive. And so if you let little bobbers out there to see what they bite on, you get to build some stuff.
You are being incredibly kind and not saying what we're all thinking. Kids are assholes, and that's fine.
No.
Like, they want to fight things. Like
they want to be murder hobos.
They want to be murder hobos, and I'm like, you guys hate this game. So and I think we talked about this last time when I was on this. I ran them through a Theros game, the 5e stuff. And it was supposed to be this kick-ass, like, sun god versus the, like, Hades and, like, no. It was Grand Theft Chariot. They ran from the law for most of that game because because one of my kids who had first game ever decided to make a Minotaur warrior and kill 8 guards.
Incredible.
One of them he like threw a tavern window in front of other people,
and so they were on the run for the rest of that was the game, is being on the run from the law.
Incredible.
Like, I was okay with my story kind of being balled up and just like thrown in the trash. But like, it's all about the fun. It's about experiencing the world. That's what they wanted to experience, was being.
And there's a quote that I love, which I think is so applicable to it, which is, plans are useless, planning is essential.
Yeah.
And I really love that quote. Because yeah, like I think because so many people are like, I want a homebrew, but it's so intimidating and I don't know how to like, and it's like, yeah, it is. It can be super intimidating, especially in something like D&D. But that's where the modules, I think, actually kind of come in handy, because you can kind of take them and gut them. Like, you can use it as kind of a framework and like read through it. Like, if you're going to GM and you kind of want a homebrew, but you're not comfortable coming up with an entire world or an entire subclass or whatever, take a module and read through it and kind of be like, okay, I like this, but I think it would be cooler for the story if this happened, and kind of gut it and shift it that way. And then, again, be ready to throw everything you've planned out the window.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. My improv skills fucking carry my ass.
Yeah.
So
Same.
in contrast to what he was talking about with the kids' games, we've been playing a weekly game and cipher system called Gods of the Fall for over a year now. And I'm in a weird position that I'm technically a player, but then he's the GM and I'm like the background sounding board to so much. And so like we've already covered the base of what is Gods of the Fall. And then he went just sideways because of the noun, verb, and adjective I picked for my character. Made things crazier. And so he built like an entire separate reality on top of what is Gods of the Fall. And then typically in those games, like you're running around in like the main capital of this world and trying to figure out this big mystery of like why this one area is in total darkness and it causes chaos, problems, whatever. Just like, so he just sauntered through that portion, was like, all right, so I'm going to make desert people here and mountain people here. And like the trolls are going to have
one of the things I like to do.
Well, yeah, but so he loves culture and mythology and everything like that. And so for him, I'm just making this easier because you're not going to talk about this easy. He will take the framework that you're talking about, but then pick out one little pillar of the framework and be like, and now there's this entire culture that goes into this one thing.
Yes.
And this culture into this thing.
So
and then there's consequences that happen in the freaking background. And the only one I can like, that like instinctually, like the character inside of me is just like, fuck those bitches, is he made like this small pantheon of goddesses that was trying to recruit one of the other player characters. And instead of that going the way he wanted, which I knew how he wanted it to go, but it just so happened that how my character encountered them for the first time, they were kind of picking on another character in the game, and instantly they became enemies of all of us. And so now we're wondering, like, they're off like conquering the city after we had slain the evil tyrants and
mini boss.
Yeah, and all this other stuff, and like we're trying to take care of other things, and every now and then they're like, oh well, the blah blah blahs, whatever the name is for them, I forget, because every time my character hears it, she's like, oh, the bitches. Okay.
The Heather bitches.
Yeah, the Heathers. They're still doing shit in the background. We're like, we'll take care of them eventually, I guess.
Is it really any better to be a Veronica?
The Heathers, man. Come on.
I haven't watched it.
Dude. All right, that's a separate name.
Sorry. But yeah, so it's like he's not going into
an arrow to the heart. An arrow to the heart, that is.
He loves that movie.
It's so good.
I don't even know what the fuck we're talking about now.
Oh, fuck me gently with a chainsaw. The Heathers.
No, you have to pay me for that.
Ah! The Heathers. So he said that Heather bitches, and I said, is it really any better to be a Veronica? and
that means nothing to me.
it's because it's a reference to the Heathers. And, it's a movie and now musical. But anyway, back to game world building. Hi, we're here.
Yeah, he honestly doesn't really stop thinking about the layers that go into his various games.
Yeah.
And he's not joking around with the Google Doc stuff. And it's minimum twice a day. It's like, hey, I had this idea. Like, what about this and this? And whether it's culture or interactions or characters or whatever, like constantly thinking of something, writes it down in the Google Doc notes, and it gets inserted somewhere eventually.
Yeah. Well, so like, I got a question for you guys, because world building, like we were talking about orcs. Okay. How do you take something that is by a company specifically stamped like they have to be this way, and you don't like it? How do you change it?
I mean, I very simply say it is not that way. It is this way, and that's it.
I pretty much just go, no, because I don't wanna. But a lot of the time, what I do is you can cook that in, though, right? So what you can do in game, if you want, is you can, have that be the start, especially, if you have people that are starting out with like level 1 to 3 characters. They don't have a whole lot of world experience. They're still going on a lot of like what their parents told them and so on and so forth. We lost them. Come back.
Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties.
That's my new indie band name.
Right. Clip that, Nova, and we will use that audio every time we have technical difficulties. Just Nate and I singing, come back, let me get them back. Oh no.
Honestly, a good example of that kind of came up in the game today. Wizards of the Coast's entire thing is gnolls they are all evil. They are all brainless creatures that just want to go out and murder and kill and steal shit because some evil hyena god was evil a while ago, and now all of them are. So I was like, no, fuck you. I am going to make them... So, like, I didn't even use the basis of what was the Coast created. I kind of just chucked it all out in general. So now gnolls in my world are just a largely nomadic, largely nomadic people that kind of either have one territory or essentially wander the world.
Yeah,
and I've got their entire name. System of hierarchy planned out,
we will
and it just became
every time we have to have
not sort of how can I convert it to be less shitty. It was just more of a I'm not gonna let people's predispositions of what they've been fed for a very long time by a company that doesn't give a fuck affect how my world works.
Yeah, I think one thing that I did with the orcs on Lanamora, Legends of Lanamora. Obviously I chucked all that out. Oh, they're back.
Coming back. Yay!
Technology.
It happens. So one thing that I did with Legends of Lanamora, specifically with the orcs in my world, I obviously chucked out the, everyone is evil. Just get it out. Nobody needs that negativity. But in addition to doing that, I mean, because with making a monolithic evil race, it dehumanizes that race, and that's horrible. So what you have to do is, or what I at least have been trying to do is, since there was that dehumanization from the source, I need to find a way to humanize them. And so adding culture and, all of that stuff, what makes them different, what makes them unique, and, just what makes them celebrated, I guess.
Nice.
And that's, one of the things, like, the founder of one of the continents on my world was an orc. Yeah. And they ended up naming the continent after him. And he's afraid of birds. So it's not a horrible thing. I mean, like, just because they've been dehumanized doesn't mean that they're only going to have positive traits or positive things about in specific individuals. And it's not like all orcs are afraid of birds, because that's no different. It's, innocuous, but it's still no different than saying that they're all evil. So that one specifically, he's afraid of birds, but that's not a specifically positive trait. And so just for that monolithic figure.
Yeah. Another thing that you can, and this is what I was saying when technology said you didn't get to be a part of the conversation for a moment. When you have players who are playing characters that are, levels 1 to 3, ostensibly they don't have a whole lot of world experience. They haven't, been adventuring. They haven't been about the continents and so on and so forth. And so you can have them have that be their reality, but then when they encounter these characters, you challenge that. And so you kind of then have them learning and have them as characters in game unlearning these biases, where you have, where they're met with an orc character and they're met with an orc character that's very intelligent, or that's a fucking paladin, or that is something that they've always been told orcs can't be. And it's like, no, dude, like, we're just as varied and different as you are. We just are a tribal people. Like, like you have it challenged in game. You actively address it in game. You can just say, no, we don't do it. It doesn't exist.
That's my way.
I mean, I know the easiest way is just being like, no, because that's easy. No, shut up. But like in the game that I'm running with them about this, where you're playing the gods and the new gods, one of my players loves to min-max. And honestly, I go ahead and let him because like that's part of your fun, is you want to try to find the numbers to try to beat things. So I fuck with you by making you make moral decisions. Numbers, sure, you can kill anything. Now morals. So he made... essentially, he wanted to make the god of monster slaying. So I went, awesome. Every single thing in the world has a culture. Now you have to decide, are you against it or are you for it?
What is a monster?
Yeah, what is a monster? And it has fucking wrecked his world.
Good.
To the point where it's become this wonderful philosophical question. Because, I mean, for me, like, orcs are so much fun. I think of them like packs and this wonderful group of tribal, but also like they have their own system. Like,
you heard it here first. You heard it here first, folks. Gaylan said, "Fuck them kids."
He's 20.
Yeah, no,
he's 20. And he's, like, new into right into college, and he's got this like D&D 5e like focused mind, like alignment systems, and I'm like, I'm gonna take your alignment system, boom.
And that's another really good question. Like, in previous editions, especially 3.5, like the alignment system was very much necessary. Now you hate it. I was gonna say, now in this world of homebrews and just fuck with all kind of possibility. Like, what do we think about about alignments.
I tend to question if it was ever necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like at all. From what all I've ever seen is alignment being used as an excuse to do something. I've never seen it guide a character. Yeah. I've always seen it used as an excuse. For
feats, like alignment was always a requirement for very specific pieces in the book. That was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it definitely flattens characters or entities or anything. I mean, it's serves a purpose in certain frameworks, but I mean, if you look at any person and complexities of any NPC, PC, race, religion, culture, whatever, there's going to be nuance there. And when you assign, you're one of these 9.
Yeah.
Which is...
I think it can sometimes be useful for the player themselves when they're being genuine with it. Like say you have somebody who is really wanting to explore, something outside of themselves. They can use that as a guide point, as a touchstone to be like, okay, this is the mindset that I need to put myself in when I'm making this decision outside of myself. But then again, you get that age-old problem of, well, my character would do it. And really, that excuse always comes down to you can justify pretty much any action as being in character when you look at what your character has been through to that point with these people and for the story. Like, truly, it's just about choosing not to be an asshole. Because when you have to say, well, my character would, you're being like, dude, there was a better choice to make there.
I've used that excuse in City and Snow. Okay, but it was for Hannah seeing a manticore flying away and going, I'm going to jump on its face and try and grapple it. Like, there is a difference between someone going, I'm going to shoot a guy in the face with no provocation because that's what my character would do, versus my character has 7 intelligence. She sees a thing flying away. She's got heavy armor on. She's like, I'm going to weigh it down with my face.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would say that's based on the maturity of the player.
Mm-hmm.
The player is mature enough to make decisions that can go with or without alignment. Yeah. Then sure, yeah, absolutely. But if it's like Lex said, like, if you're gonna I'm going to try to be a dick to the other person at my table, but because my character would do that, like, no, you're just trying to push the limits of what you can do in this setting as a group dynamic.
Yeah, like I brought a character sheet to a GM one time, and I was like chaotic neutral on there. They're like, you can't play chaotic neutral. I was like, why? And they were like, because people only play chaotic neutral because they can't play chaotic evil. And I said, absolutely not. That's not the way that I play chaotic neutral. I play chaotic neutral the way it should be played. It's a Selena Kyle. It's a Felicia Hardy. It's Pamela Isley. Like, it's a character that, they could be seen as good or bad depending on what lens you view them through. Like, a chaotic neutral person is not there for society of any kind. They're there for what they think is right and what they think is wrong, and fuck you.
on that sort of note, evil characters, I make a very hard fast rule. If you're playing an evil character, you are evil to I see it more as a who am I serving sort of situation. Good, I am serving other people and myself. Neutral is my own sort of interests come first, but I will not hesitate to help other people if need be. Evil is my needs come first. And the chunks along is how you go about it. So when I played an evil character once who she became the goddess Seven because I was like, no, I want this character to finish her arc. So I put her as a deity in my own games. But her entire thing was, okay,
and
yeah, this character might
world building.
Yeah, character might be an evil piece of shit, but I'm with 3 other people around this table who don't want their characters to be evil pieces of shit by another player. So Seven was like evil, manipulative, will blackmail NPCs right in front of their faces, lie to the other PCs and get away with it. But she never did anything antagonistic towards them. And I think that's the key point, where you can take a character and have them be and not ruin the experience for the other people at the table.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've grown up my entire life. My dad's been playing games since they fucking first came out. And so I grew up hearing this story of his college days, and he played an evil character, like the most prime evil person in this setting. But he kept it a secret from everyone. And he let the group keep moving forward because it was like for the benefit of who he was evil for. Himself, his God, all that stuff. And so it ended up turning into this wonderful background story of like all of this stuff that you're reading in the book is happening, but also that character's doing some crazy shit. And like, yes, evil characters can exist, but they have to coexist with the story.
Right. And there's a difference. There's a difference between villain and antagonist. And if you are a player character and you are wanting to be evil, yeah, you're signing on to play a villain. You are not the villain, and you are not the antagonist of the story. So don't be an antagonist to your party. And if you're in an evil camp, this is just a bit of free advice, so take it for what it's worth. If you are in an evil campaign, which some people do, like they're fun, villain games are fun, do not betray your party unless you can TPK them. Don't be an idiot. Like, don't betray. Like,
don't betray the party in general.
In general,
I'm with that.
Yeah, just don't.
In general, don't do it. But like if there were ever a place that you were going to do it, it would be a villain's campaign. Don't do it if you can't. Don't do it. But if you're dead set on doing it, don't do it if you can't kill everybody.
My one thing I'm very, very against in terms of tabletops in general, and I see this in a lot of pre-written media, especially Wizards of the Coast shit, and I absolutely hate it. I think it's awful game design. I think it's anti-player. I think it's anti-people in general, is that official content and modules and newer or crueler DMs, or like even game masters in general, because it happens in other systems, like to snatch away your character from you for the smallest things that you might not even be aware of or not have a chance to react to. And I fucking hate that. I think it's the worst cardinal sin in tabletops.
You're talking about like automatic alignment shifts and stuff like
shit
that?
like that. There's something in Icespire Peak, Icewind Dale, which is a very, very recent Wizards of the Coast adventure, where there's a certain type of metal called Shardolin, where if you have in your inventory anything that is Shardolin in your inventory at all, every dawn you have to make a charisma save. If you fail that save, you are now chaotic evil. You do not get a say in this.
Yeah. I did that.
I think that's fucked. I think that's awful.
Yeah. In Curse of Strahd, they've got something similar with the Amber Temple. And Emily, my wife, my darling wife, was the one who touched the thing. And I was like, okay, you're evil now. And she said, no, I'm not. And I mean, part of what it goes down to is that she got so mad at me. And so I was like, all right, look, it's only going to last until you it's only going to last until you pass the save on a dawn. So I did like the reverse thing where it was, okay, well, once you save, you're fine. You just like get like a level exhaustion or something. But she was not cool with it. And I think it goes, it's a parallel to bodily autonomy. Issues. And it's not cool. And I didn't think about it at the time. And once it happened, I was like, oh, I can see why this is bad. I'm not going to do that again. Here's your fix. But I think that having a more nuanced approach to stuff like that, where you can start to see that effect, like you can start to see what's going on. Like,
well, I mean, again, this darn Wednesday night, we've been through a lot of trauma in this game. The players have.
Sorry.
No, it's been fantastic. It's like the right kind of trauma. That sounds.
No, but like 100%, like that's one of the things that we have to talk about, like as far as like GMing and world building and things like that we have to be cognizant about is like, yes, this is a game, but as I was saying earlier, these are real feelings, and these are, you know, when people sit down at your table, they're trusting you, and I am of the belief that before anybody sits down at your table, at minimum, you need to have had some kind of consent sheet, but at best, you should have had a conversation beforehand of like, what are you looking to get out of this game? What do you not at all want to see in this game? You know, so on and so forth. And so that you can kind of be cognizant of that in your world and building your world and as you're GMing, because we're here to have a good time. And sometimes we want to use it for a little bit of trauma processing. Like sometimes that's nice. Sometimes it's nice to have the power to change things about our life that we couldn't in real life. And so when we're playing these things, we, you know, impart that kind of trust in our GM to kind of guide us through that and take care of us in that, and for us to take care of the GM too, because it's a lot of work that gets put into building these worlds and shepherding these experiences, and it can have an effect on a GM in ways that you wouldn't expect as a player.
I mean, I would extend it to even in the middle. Because I've had to do that so many times, including probably the story she's about to tell, of like decisions. It's on the same subject of like the Strahd and the Icewind, where like all of a sudden you're going to change completely, but not because you touched something, but because you kept making all these decisions that you didn't like. You haven't been registering that is.
Affecting the players around you.
Affecting the players around you. And I'm writing it down going, you know, you're turning into this. That is not your character goal. So I've had to actually talk to people like, hey, if you keep going this route, like I in theory would be forced to make you blankety blank.
Yeah.
Are you cool with that? Or are you wanting to change?
So in the Wednesday night game, same character before that min-max to be the monster slayer. Through various things, like this gets complicated. Sorry. So my character is from a completely different realm and different magic and everything, and he accidentally gets roped into like being. And mind you, this character is dumb as shit. He gets roped into being my number one advisor. Oof, accident, whatever. We rolled with it and trying to do it, and he keeps making poor choices, and the rest of the party is like, okay, well, you're dumb, so we're just gonna like keep, like, it's okay, we're gonna keep moving forward, it's fine. You know what, you kind of did, like that was like, you kind of betrayed our trust just then, but again, you're dumb, so
oh okay. No.
And he kept doing these things that we were like, and finally, like my character was like, I've had enough. I am supposed to protect that other character at all costs. I revoke your title. And mind you, revoking the title meant he had power stripped away from him like words stripped away from him in that system. That's a big deal. Like all this stuff happened and it was this cascading effect, and the player went mad, or the character went mad, which utterly like realigned him technically, but like the player character himself got excited because he was like, I have all new stats to play with. How does this work now? And like the math geek in him lit on fire and was super excited, but his character has like been miserable for.
Yeah, it would be like if you got free, like in D&D terms, you got free levels, and for a while you had been prepping and planning your character to go a certain way, and in the middle of it, like 2 of your levels just got yoinked and potentially replaced with something. I had been talking with them the whole time.
That just sounds like consequences of actions.
It was.
It was. But like honestly, as a GM, I mean, I've been GMing kids, but this was one of the hardest things that I have ever had to do, because for a brief moment, I didn't realize completely that I had tied someone's major powers and things that their character can do to another person's, to basically another player's will. Yeah. So then the whole time, I keep checking in with my other player of like, so this is how she's feeling. Are you cool with that? Yes. No. I want to do the betrayal. I want to do the thing. Okay.
And but that is like a show of what a good GM you are, because there are GMs that would not do that. That like would be like, that's on the players. Like that's right. On you as party members to interact and know how each others are feeling in and out of character.
Yeah, I got so scared 2 months in advance before the major decision came down of where she yoinked this kid's, this 20-year-old's powers. I'm going to this guy being like, so look, if this goes the way that you are totally doing very well on, she's going to wreck you. Are you cool with this? Yes. Would you like me to make things to replace those pieces of your character that you're about to lose? Yeah, that sounds really cool. Like, or do you want to do it? Do you want me to do it? Like, what? And because I was so afraid I was going to piss this kid off.
Yeah, he ended up loving it, and
yeah.
But that was intense. Like the entirety of like, because he was doing this shitty thing of being antagonistic towards other player characters, but there was this outside management of the situation to keep everything on.
Yeah, it's one of the cool things that I like about the Cypher system and some of the other things that these guys have done is you get experience points for character arcs. Mm-hmm. So if you know that your character is going to go a certain way, well, put it down on your sheet and get points for it. Mm-hmm. And so he had chosen multiple times, like going down the wrong path and trying to atone for it. And so like he made this choice of like going down these ways.
Yeah.
And in the background was talking with me, but
and we as the other player characters weren't completely sure that was going on. Because we aren't all completely open about all of our like major and minor arcs.
Yeah.
Some of them were open about, others were just like, nope, that's just a me thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of touches on, you know, as a DM or GM, like one thing that, I mean, at least for me, that I strive to do is, you know, show, don't tell. Mm-hmm. But there are some instances where, like with this, I mean, there's something that's so game changing, literally, that, you know, you have to have that constant communication with your player characters. And I mean, it's like when you've got your big reveal too, we've all got them, the big reveal at some point in the game. But it's like that's the stuff that you are very carefully monitoring how much you're giving to your players. And then you get to the time that the reveal comes and it's like, hold on, are they going to get it? Is this all going to connect? Is this all going to make sense? And it's like that, like, had you not been in contact with that, you know, player with all of these character things, I mean, there's no guarantee that they would make the connections with all of the arcs happening, and it's like the rug gets pulled out from under them. And I mean, it's a similar thing with the storytelling process of dropping the hints in such a way that, drawing those threads and those lines that when you finally get that big reveal, it's fulfilling and juicy. Feels good.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I know.
I was just going to say, and sometimes you can hit your players over the head with it and they will try to just charge through it feet first.
What are you talking about?
Oh, I couldn't be talking about Nicole or Emily or Nova. Listen, everybody in the Legends party is like slam fist on table, throws table through door. Like
there are going to be parts in season 2 that how to say this? I'm not frozen. I'm very still. There are some things. There are things that will happen in season 2, out now wherever you find podcasts, that are going to be hard in a good way for these characters, because of the routes that they've taken so far and everything. I mean, that's how all stories go. But I mean, just with the specific decisions that these 3 characters have made. Most of what my world building has been up to this point has been fast and loose. It's been like, all right, here's my world. This is everything. This is the politico-economic structure. This is the socioeconomic structure. Have fun. This is what's happening. And they've been making specific decisions along the way. I know where I'm trying to get them to. They get there. But because of the decisions they've made, once they get to a certain point in season 2, things are going to be interesting. That's all I'm going to say about
it's so cryptic.
That's exactly how I have to talk.
Have you recorded these episodes and you're being cagey for my audience, or you're being cagey for your players right now?
I'm being cagey for my players and potential players.
Goss, the Goss girl. Yeah. I've got.
I mean, there's things we're setting up.
Yeah, there are things that we're setting up here.
Lex, talk about it, guys. I've always got the Goss.
One of the interesting things too, I mean, I had recently a world building session with Lizzie, who's the DM of City and Snow. Because we're sibling podcasts, I am working with her on some of these things, which I also will not divulge.
And we need to talk about the Villains podcast that I was talking about. Would be really cool to be set in Lanamora.
Yes.
Let me play a villain. Sorry.
Absolutely. I'm always into it.
Yes.
So, I mean, we had a world building session on Thursday, I think, Lizzie and I, and it's a lot of fun because of how intertwined the stories are.
Listen, I'm going to say this now. If you bring in Descendant of Hannah, I will fucking cry.
I've already, I don't know if you're caught up on Legends, but I made a Carpathius reference in God. Legends. The Carpathius is their primary DMPC. He's great. Cute. I love him. He's a
I said, if you bring in a Descendant of Hannah in any form, I will fucking cry.
Who's to say? But one thing that I want to do with the world in general of Lanamora is, be open enough to share in the building with other people, because we are making these 2 separate podcasts telling 2 different stories with all of this. I mean, the great thing about D&D is it being collaborative storytelling. And so one thing that's been interesting for me is also letting go of some of those world building aspects as well.
Yeah. And that's hard sometimes.
Yeah. In certain instances, I'm really excited about it personally. I'm like, yes, absolutely. This is your thing. I love it. I'm absolutely going to use things later on. And I really very much enjoy that. Like, one thing I want to be able to do at some point is, say that, there are tons of games being run in this world that are all canon. Because the time frame is so wild. Like, there are 127 ages. The average 127 ages between Legends podcast and the City and Snow podcast. An age on average is about 100 years. So there's all this time that you can play with all these things, and the most fun thing for me is being the primary creator, I guess, of the world. Okay, yeah, I'm cool with all this stuff. Now let's figure out how we tie it all together. I think that's, for me, the most fun part of being a DM is yes, and now how the fuck do I make this work?
I agree.
See, I kind of run things a little bit differently because I'm not actively like bringing other people in and like letting them use my world, because it's my world.
That's your baby.
Yeah. What I will do, if player characters are receptive enough, I will literally just sit down with them for an hour and just go, okay, let's work out who you are, where you are in the world, who you know, what you know, etc. And I will just sit down with them out for like hours and world build with them.
Yeah.
Which is very conducive to Monster of the Week.
Yeah. I really like getting that excitement from people, because it feeds back into itself. You're going to be more invested into a world if you know where you are in it. If I've sat down with you, if I worked out where you are, I've worked out details, I've worked out who you know, I've given you people that you know, etc., etc. It all feeds back into itself. So you feel more connected to the world. I feel like people are respecting my world better. I feel like it all goes back into itself, and it's more fun for everyone.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the trade-off that you make there when you're less open to the collaborative world build. You have to be open to like an educational collaborative character build, because you have to help that person know enough about the world and help them build their character in a way that they have built the world around their character. I think is the trade-off there. Yeah.
I would say the trade-off comes more into the collaborative world build. It comes in different forms. So I would say 100%. I mean, it like different levels. It comes down to it's like I'm less open to collaborative world building, like changing the base details and things about it. Whereas I know Nate's more open to that sort of thing, but I'm more like open to the, okay, while we are in game and while we are building characters, you tell me what you want to do, we'll work it out.
Yeah.
But you are working like within these rules. Yeah. But once the game starts, this is a sandbox. You do what the fuck you want.
Right.
Well, so have you guys ever let your players, like, so after the game has started, after all those rules have been made, have you ever let them create pieces and then added it in?
It depends. In D&D, partially. It'll be things like you'll have your like background NPCs and other things like that. But for my world in D&D, it's like it's a very set place. You're like playing in the doll's house I've set up.
Okay. Right on.
But in something like Monster of the Week, character creation is so collaborative, and you are creating a character and parts of the world around them that it's very different to say you have NPCs here, you have NPCs here, and things kind of don't change too much, but you can change what you're doing while you're in the world, but you can't meta change things. But in Monster of the Week, it'll be there's things like the Crooked has there's moves that are like, people who are here, and when it comes up in play, you just go, the keeper will go, okay, who are they? What do they do? Tell me who they are and what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I trust my players enough, I will just hand them those reins.
Mm-hmm. Right on.
There have been things that my players have crafted that I've adopted as part of the world, I think, if that is kind of the way that we're looking at it. With Nova and the Thornburns for Legends, that's whole family tree that has a, rich history, and they apparently invented potion making. So sure. Okay. And so that's been a thing. I mean, we've had a few different Thornburns throughout the 3.
Yes,
now.
I played with one of them.
And so that's like a kind of a small version, because I mean, it's not I mean, why not? Basically, it's kind of where if this.
And you see it all the time in especially in D&D settings. It's with like if you watch Dimension 20 Fantasy High with Brennan Lee Mulligan. And in my own games, and like that you see it all the time where like you'll present something as being a part of a character as the GM. You're like, you know this place, and then if you hand the reins to the character, to the player, in that way they can kind of describe the place, and they can kind of build the place out, and it becomes collaborative in that kind of way, and they can have a hand in all of that.
Yeah, right. I mean, with the world building sessions I do with Lizzie, obviously there's one thing that's going to come up in City and Snow. I don't know if the episode's been recorded yet or not, but there is a mechanic that Lizzie developed.
I told you I've got the goss always.
Yeah. Lizzie developed a mechanic for a specific thing that I was like, yes, absolutely. That's
if
perfect.
I say ritual, does that make sense?
I can't confirm or deny. But yeah, that's definitely something that has been created, and a few of the City and Snow characters actually have had more of an impact on the world of Lanamora than my characters have.
Right.
Like who's played by Izzy, is a paladin, and paladins,
and they're set before they're set before Legends as well. Like,
a long time.
Yeah, a long time. So they're gonna have their game has implications, but they also have certain constraints as well.
Yeah, and so one of the constraints that I put in on the world of Lanamora, there are no gods, there are no paladins, there are no warlocks. Those are the rules. And then I put those rules in place for certain reasons. One of those rules I broke pretty early on in the Legends campaign season 1 because it made sense narratively. And then we had the first warlock in Millennia in Drew, one of those players. But the other rules, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I mentioned there are no undead either. And so one of the other rules was, there are no paladins. And then Izzy had such a great idea for their character in City and Snow that I was like, yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And
it's because non-binary people get what we want.
That's just how it goes. And so Lizzie and I just recently figured out.
We just get what we want.
Yeah. Lizzie, the DM, and I just figured out recently, like, what does that look like? Why does it look the way it does?
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And so, I mean, this is months
and you had to do that with Drew's necromancy as well.
Yeah. because Drew, being a warlock, she's also one of the first people in at least written memory that can actually have some hold on the undead and spirits. And so it's kind of like one of those things where it's a fledgling art now, and there aren't many, if any, people who can do it. And so I think especially for those things where it narratively makes things more interesting, I'm more willing to bend and break those rules.
Yeah.
Nice.
And again, coming from long form RP initially, I'm super into collaborative world building. Whenever you have big group RPs, like, you always have to have some degree of collaboration in the world build. So yeah, like I am super into that. It's hard for me with my ADHD to not hyper fixate when I world build, and like I'm like, I need to know what kind of religions there are, what those religions, think truly, like, are these, is this religion split up the way Christianity is? Are there different sects? What do those like? I just get so hyper fixated sometimes that
Wait a minute,
I have
why
to.
am I now trying to figure out what the cost of grass seed per bushel is? I was looking at this.
Right, truly. 100%. And so I have to kind of remind myself and step back and be like, no. Like, we can do this together, and it might this may never come up. Why am I pressuring myself to figure this out? So I say all of that to tell all the people listening that want to homebrew and world build that you don't have to figure everything out. Some things you can figure out as it comes up. Like, I think you definitely should have foundational stuff figured out.
Right.
As I kind of want to drop something in that's related to that.
Yeah.
So a while ago, I ran City Sides Cardiff on this stream for people. The entire stream was improv. Every single second of it was improv. I had two scenes planned out. The scene where you found the Snallygaster in Cardiff Arcade, and the very intro scene. That is it. Every single part of it was made up improv.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have big worlds like all created with all lots of little details, because especially if you can work with your players, they will help you fill in the gaps.
Yes. Oh, and I kind of want to drop something on that subject is,
yes.
So Monty Cook made, they did a big ass Kickstarter for Invisible Sun. I don't know if you guys have heard this.
Mm-hmm.
My group got to play that. It was one of the most fun things we have ever played because the whole concept was really neat. But from the get-go, my GM came to each of us and as a part of the character creation process went, what kind of play style do you want? And they basically split up 3 major ways of world building. I want to explore. I want to gain power. And I want to create and add new things to the world. And so as a part of that basic question, my GM basically kind of had an idea of how this campaign was going to go because he had an expectation from the get-go of like, we each wanted certain things. Like I was really I want to add things. And one of my friends was I want to get the numbers. I want to get all the spells. I want to get all the things. And so he got to pre-plan create how his campaign was going to go based on that. So with the conversations of the conversations of the players before the game starts, but also as a way of world building on an almost on an improv scale. It's really cool being able to do that.
Yeah.
And I've kind of implemented that in other games.
Yeah. There are moments in legends that, obviously these, not the characters, well, I mean the characters, but by extension the players. I absolutely want to know more about this information. And it's stuff that's like, Nova, I'm looking at you. This isn't relevant to the story right now. Because this was a little thing that I put in as a flavor background. Idrinden. They're in chat right now asking.
Yeah, I'm just now looking at chat. I've been a horrible host. I'm so sorry. I'm just now looking at chat. Hi.
The curse of Idrinden is that they won't leave him alone. It's one of the longest running jokes is that they keep looking for more info on this guy Idrinden, and it's
fuck off.
Not fuck off. Like it's interesting information for sure. Is it part of this story? No. Is it gonna pull this story that we're now a season and some change into right now completely off the rails? Yes. So unfortunately, I have to put the guardrails up. But because by the time season 2 is over, we're going to have 3 years under our belt in content for the world of Lanamora. At that point, I can say, "Hey, what stories do you all want to explore?" And I think I'm pretty excited about that.
I would like to explore the story of the cleric Malekith, and before he was a level 20 god.
I'm going to tell you right now that little mini arc that we did we did a winter episode, 3 winter episodes, called it Frost Feast Anomaly. That episode was set 30 years prior to the events of our current seasons. There's a lot of information in those 3 episodes. That's what I'm going to say.
I kind of want to talk about something that we touched on a little bit earlier, but I kind of want to bring a different light to it, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I wanted to talk about was restrictions keepers, DMs, GMs, whatever, can place on players even at character creation. So in my world, in the world that's currently going on in an Essien Tale, there is no goblinoids. They don't exist. Goblins, bugbears, hobgoblins, they do not exist. Straight up. There's not a lot of stuff from, I think, like the Magic the Gathering systems. Like it just doesn't exist. Like you don't have Warforged, you don't have like the Theros stuff. It's just not there. And there's also a few subclasses I restrict and races and stuff. I don't allow the Reborn from the newest one, and I don't allow Tempest Clerics.
Because they're too good, I know.
No, very different reason. A lot of the stuff is like conducive to the story, and I don't have hard set limits on it, aside from a few things. But I also believe that those limitations can be used to foster more creativity. Because especially if you're playing in like we talked about it before, but I am a very collaborative character creator. If you come into my game saying, I want to play a goblin, whatever, who does this and this, and I'm like, you're going to be disappointed, because like either it's not part of my world, or part of the world that you're trying to explore just might not exist. So I would rather sit down with someone for an hour and a half, work around the restrictions that I've set up, and create something better as a result. But also I don't feel that, because the GM's there is to have fun as well. And if they don't want to face something that's happened to them, maybe, like, personally, I restrict Tempest Clerics because, and I'm just going to come out straight and say it. One of the people who like fairly heavily abused me in the past played a Tempest Cleric in D&D, and that is now just like directly connected to Tempest Clerics. I can never break that connection.
Yeah.
So Tempest Clerics are not allowed in my games, and they never will be. So if you come to me saying, I want to play a Tempest Cleric, I'll say, get the fuck out. I've told you why. Get out.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't have to deal with that as a GM either.
Yeah.
No, and that's the thing is like you like again going back to like we have got to be engaging in consent in all parts of our life, especially in D&D. Like we need to have these informed conversations with the other players at the table and the GM to just, and then we have kind of a session 0 game.
Yep.
So you know, we've all talked to each other, we've all, you know, talked about our boundaries, talked about our playgrounds, you know, what's fair game, what's not. Okay, cool. We all know that theoretically. All right, now let's sit down and let's play together a session 0. And if it gels, if the chemistry works, great. If not, oh well. If a couple of you are feeling it and some of you aren't, then you know, you're adults, figure it out. Yeah. But and I mean, maybe you're not adults. You should be adults if you're listening to this. You should be at least 18. But God damn.
Does that apply to hosts as well, or?
Oh no, I am just the edge of 13. Bless you. But yeah, like that's the thing is like you need to be having these conversations. You need to be having these kind of preliminary games to determine if you guys are going to work out. Like, and it's okay if you don't. Like, we're all adults, and sometimes we're looking for different things, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be from like a this is triggering standpoint. It could be from like, I don't really like to play with min-maxers. I'm not super into playing with min-maxers. Like, I can do it, especially if it's like a large party situation. Like if it's a 6-person party, having one min-maxer, not the end of the world. But like, I don't game that way. So I'm not super into playing with people who do. Like, I like more RP. Like, sure, I like combat. Like, combat's fun, but I like RP as well. Like, that's what got me into it. Like, I used to write paragraphs, bitch. Like, I'm a fan fiction writer. I like RP. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Which
I played in a game when I was in high school, and the GM had a very specific thing that he played in a 3-5 world, and he said, you guys will play humans, because in my world, it's a Britain-esque continent idea of like, you're basically humans in Britain, and there are other races. Those are all the antagonists. That's what it is. They're there.
Ew.
Hi, I can't move for all these red flags.
that feels so colonizery, and oh, that's so gross.
I mean,
that's colonialism. The game.
Not like we were in one little area, and I wasn't in the game for very long, and my guys died a lot because reasons.
There's tea there. Wait, what?
Well, he was one of these GMs where he had ideas about what he wanted the players to go up against, and sometimes that was very story oriented, and sometimes it was not. Like, it makes no real sense of why a random storm giant shows up because I used the table. And so my little lowly fighter totally got murdered, just straight up, because you attack, something that was a CR8 went against a bunch of 4th level guys. And the reason for that was, should have tried to avoid it. Like, well, we tried, kind of.
Yeah, not every...
I touched a table?
I mean, that's another thing as well, as like, when it comes to
are you gaming in good faith?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's that. And then also there's just, the thought of encounters, not combat specifically. So it's like, so often it's, you're either doing RP or combat, and there's not a lot of gray area in between the two. And it's like, if you throw something like a Storm Giant at a bunch of 4th level players, do the players know your intent with that? Like, is this something like, did I just roll on a table and this is what I rolled? Oh, you should probably run from this, but might not be explicit in telling you that. Like, do these level 4 players know that they can't go up against that? And is that player knowledge versus character knowledge? That's a whole other thing. But
yeah,
it's like there's so many more interesting things to do than a strict combat encounter with whatever monsters, antagonizers, what have you. And I think that's something that needs to be set up and definitely talked about. Like, the world isn't all just war and peace. There are shades of gray.
Yeah. And there's opportunity, like, and that's the thing is, like, in encounters, there's opportunity to, like, sway it any kind of way. Like, look at what happened in Honey Heist today. Like, there's a way to, kind of swing things so that they don't happen a certain way. And this was supposed to be about world building, and we've gone all over the place about GMing. So if you want to Lex Talk About It series on GMing, tell us on Twitter and maybe we'll make it happen.
Yeah. I do have something that is world building, actually. Yes. I had a question.
Yes.
For everyone.
Hit me.
Oh no.
Who said oh no?
Layne.
Oh
Why?
no.
Why? Why oh no?
Someone's got to be the antagonist.
Well, you've touched on what I'm going to touch on. When you're creating your antagonists, what do you go to? Like, what is the driving force behind your antagonists? There's such a driving force for your player characters. Like,
yeah.
What goes into actually creating them for you?
Background story and player choice.
So you drive it by what your players are doing and what they've got.
Yeah. If you're because I have NPCs and characters set up in the world, and like I said, my players' actions will change how they think of you, what they're doing, what they're like, how they're acting in the world. So in the first ever game I ran, there's an NPC who is essentially working on making the world's first gun. And that was her entire little thing. She was constantly traveling around continents and just using her money and power and like political sway to get the materials to build this first gun. And she kind of constantly kept running into the players, not due to her own partially due to her own machinations and partially due to what the players were doing. Mm-hmm. So she'd go to, if she was in Urlo, she'd be then next heading to Port Vienza to head to the next continent over. And if the players happened to meet up, that would change things. And what they did, that would change things. So if they, so for one part, she needed a rock called Faith Steel to kind of work the trigger mechanism, and it would only work with that. The players previously had killed this group of bandits that were kind of taking over and keeping people out of the Faith Steel mines. So as a result, the Faith Steel became a lot easier to procure, and she was more happy with them. But the things other things that they did were affecting her opinion of them, and in the end, it came down to they'd pissed her off enough that she is now one of the major antagonists towards them.
Yeah.
But the things she'd doing helped her along the way. They hindered her along the way, and it all built that up. While I was also bringing in things from other people's backstories and working those in. There were other arcs that were happening, characters were changing in the background, and It all depended on the player actions. I never had a set villain unless they were created by the player or were part of the backstories.
Yeah.
All of them were character driven and player made.
For me, it kind of depends. It's been a mix of things. It like there are definitely ones that like I've pre-made a story and like this is the villain, and then certain decisions about how that villain gets played get made based on the choices of players. Sometimes I don't have a preset personality for a villain or a preset MO. But then other times it's player created. If there's a recurring NPC that recurringly is treated poorly because they think it's a meme, like sometimes that turns into a villain, and like in subtle ways that they wouldn't expect. Like, so it depends for me, for sure.
I'm more on the Lex way of I have a lot of pre-made people, but they're kind of like shells, and I am filling up their details with the interactions that are provided along gameplay. There are a few times I have very specific set bad guys with their personalities, but those have always been quick games that weren't going to last very long, and I was basically running them through a module. The most recent one was I ran them through the movie Underworld.
Oh my fucking God.
And
it was hilarious.
These kids, I mean, like I had all the characters with most of their stuff all mapped out because like it's a movie. That's what it is.
Right.
But the way they got there.
Please note the kids had never watched it, so they did not know what they were doing.
I was about to say, I would be right. Okay, we're throwing the term kids around, but we are people who call 21-year-olds.
No, these are like I game on average with 14 to 17-year-olds.
Okay, yeah.
And
14-year-olds have no business having seen Underworld. 17-year-olds I would allow, but
they just didn't know. I mean, like that action movie era was not in their radar. So,
God, that is so. Let's not get into it because I'll.
But I mean, regardless, like I had, we're all familiar with that movie. Like I had, Craven, I had Victor, I had.
Oh, you're not?
No,
completely mapped out. And was like, this is what their personality is because I'm running. But all the little details inside zigzagged it, and it wasn't exactly the recreation of the movie, but just damn close.
Because those kids made the same choices.
Yeah.
It's hilarious that they instinctually made the same choices as the movie. And in every corner, they were like, oh my God, what's happening next? And I'm like,
it's true. Also, the way that campaign was set up, like you obviously can't play with a group of 4, Celine and Michael. That just doesn't work. So instead, they played the vampire SWAT team, death dealers, underneath Celine. And so they got to experience everything that the main characters experienced, but they had to make their own decisions about who they were aligning with.
For the sake of Layne and other people who might be in the Twitch channel or listening via the podcast, because this will be an episode of the podcast that is premiering mid-June. But let's explain a little bit about Underworld, like Cliff Notes.
Vampires and werewolves.
Yeah, it is a very cliche, classic Romeo and Juliet story. Instead of Capulets and Montagues, it's vampires, werewolves. That's pretty much it.
And they have like they have a SWAT team.
Well, so the idea is it's modern day.
Yeah,
it was set in 2002 when the original movie came out. there had been a long time war between vampires and werewolves. Werewolves were the daytime slaves and watchers, guardians of when the vampires slept, and they rebelled. And so there has been this rebellion war that has been going on for centuries. And then the movie starts with this young vampire who is trying to figure out shit and be a good person for her culture. And she ends up falling in love with dude who gets turned into a werewolf pretty early into the movie. And then it becomes this Romeo and Juliet story, and politics plus fun action plus blowing things up with guns and stuff. It's honestly a pretty simple story.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, like, and the movie's fun and stuff, but as a campaign, it's linear. It really is.
Yeah.
But it was linear with really fun dips and details, and especially with a group of kids who have never seen this. It's almost like I homebrewed it. Yeah. They thought I homebrewed it, and I was like, it's Kate Beckinsale. Like,
yeah.
Joke's on you. You all got homework now.
Right. Oh, and after the game was over, I totally went screen share, because we played on Zoom. I was like, screen share. This is what I ran you through this first movie. If you want to have fun.
I would feel so fucking cheated.
Some of them were. Some of them were like, what? You didn't make all this up? Like, no.
Do you know what's so funny is that right now, or maybe not so much anymore, but up until very recently, you could have probably run a game based on Blade and nobody would have known.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Because like that's never been a terribly popular comic, and people don't really watch that movie anymore. People don't talk about, like, I know Gen Zers who have no idea who Blade is or what that shit's about.
Oh, my heart.
Blade, how many people have you killed? 11,497. Love that movie.
Bad guys and antagonists, I feel like, have to be very loose, because otherwise it's called writing a novel.
Yeah.
Like it, and because the whole essence of what we're doing is not concretely writing things down, we're letting them make choices, then you kind of have to be adaptable in the end, in the first place.
Yeah, and you can have, you know, like some of my villains are slightly more like their motives might be super concrete, right? Like they, you know, they are a villain because they are doing this thing, because they have this belief system, because it's a cliched quote, and like it's not always true, but I do like it. Like I find that the best villains always do believe that they're the hero of their own story. Like, you know, I don't, especially if I'm in the GM chair, if they're my big bad evil guy, like if they are the person behind everything of the campaign, like I don't want them to just be evils for evil's sake. Like that's boring. Like they need to have like concrete motives. They need to be like a person. But the ways that they go about being a villain might vary, like, you know, like it's very much that like trial and error thing of like they might throw a bunch of different curveballs and might try a bunch of different strategies because my players are running around fucking shit and I've got to figure out how to do it.
Right.
But in game, the logic is, you know, that, you know, this is an adaptable villain.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's. Go ahead.
Oh, I guess slight spoilers or something, or mini announcement. Like I'm in the middle of planning 3 mini campaigns, mini adventures to start my GMing foray with Novi, and each one of these 3 little campaigns have very different antagonists. I can't even quite say that there's villains in any of them, but there are certainly antagonists, and they're all coming from different points of view. And and one, it's going to be all about the moral choice presented to the players will decide who's the true antagonist in the situation, whether it's certain other NPCs or the player characters themselves become the antagonists. It all depends on what's going to unfold in play. In another one, you have essentially a family feud going on, and whose side are you going to be on in all of this? And then the third one, you could either, it could be very simply white people are the problem or nature. Again, that will definitely be up into
it's white people. It's white people. White people are the problem.
It's always white
It's going to be up to interpretation of the viewers at that point, because the players are definitely going to be going through situations. But it's going to,
I want the
viewer to make that choice of like, who's actually in the wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, here's the thing. They're entitled to their wrong opinion. It's white people.
One thing that I find interesting is thinking back on it now, hearing, everything that you all have said, with my foray into 5th edition, the only full module I ran has been Curse of Strahd. And that's obviously singular villain. He is who he is. He's going to do what he does within these parameters.
He do what he do.
He does what he does. He's Dracula. Okay, cool. Which was nice. It was, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's kind of flat when you're putting up against, that kind of backdrop, I guess. But what I ended up doing with Legends is, well, I created the big bad evil guy, basically. Tesvi, the console. Spoiler alert. You find out at the end of season 1, after he's been betrayed by and presumably murdered in the midpoint of season 1. Then you find out he's been working in the shadows this whole time, and he's got these big plans. Anyway, so I
working in the shadows.
I
Only me and Nate are going to get that.
So I needed another villain too, and funnily enough, it ended up being Kelvin is my secondary villain. He's who everyone thought was the villain the whole time, like the main big bad. Because he's the one who ended up killing Tesvig. Air quotes. And so, but they have their motives. They are singular entities. They have their, there's, they are what they are, basically. I was about to say some other stuff that I shouldn't say yet. But
I'm gonna get somebody to Tom Holland on this podcast. I know it.
Not me. No way, no how. I know exactly what I have and have not digressed yet.
You just put a target on your back, sir.
You can certainly try. I'll tell you what I tell my players. You can certainly try.
Well, but I always have liked stories that had more complicated endings.
Yeah.
So when you have a just stamp of like bad guy, it was Dracula. Like, okay, but when the ending has this like ambiguity, but also because you've seen the process, like, be fucking cool.
Yeah. And that's why I'm not about like 100% total escapism, right? Like I enjoy games where you kind of you have like a real villain, but also like the villain is capitalism. Or like the villain is racism, if it is a game where we are, purposefully dismantling that harmful thing from real life, cool, like I can get behind it. Like if everybody at the table is down, like I'm down, let's do it together. Like if we all trust each other and the GM is comfortable, inhabiting that space, 100%, let's do it. And that's what people don't get. Everybody is allowed to have boundaries, including GMs. It's that's life. Like people have boundaries, and some GMs just aren't comfortable inhabiting the mindset that you have to inhabit if you're making racism an attribute of your villain.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of want to touch on something with that, actually.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the things in my games is that I opt for the thing of racism doesn't exist, and if it does, it is fucking abhorrent and it is punished incredibly severely in universe.
Mm-hmm.
So an example I had was, it was fairly early on in a game. Players came across a guy. He was like a baker in one of these small little cities. What they didn't know is that secretly beforehand he'd been in other cities, just like poisoning any drow he came across, because he is a worthless piece of shit who just did that because he was a racist.
Right.
And up until then, they had never ever seen any instances of racism in the world because it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So when they met him basically getting his punishment for being a racist, it was a fucking vigilante, just he is being killed because he is doing this in this game.
Yeah.
And that is it. That is the reality of this world. If you are a shithead to other people in that way, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I also don't believe that it's like you said before, I don't feel like I should have to step into the mindset as a character of someone who is being like that. Because I'm uncomfortable doing that. I don't want to. I don't want to look at someone who's playing a tiefling and start giving them shit for the character they're playing, for the person they are being in that instance. Because there is a certain level where that does cross over into life.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so like since I game with kids, I've thought hard about that. Like, how much do I include? Because I want to be a teacher, but at the same time, I don't want to belittle a child just because oh, you're playing this and by the rules of the game, but whatever. So I go in this middle ground where I have it in there, and I never actually use or do anything that they could say is oh, you've just done racist and racism things. I'll say oh, this person says a racist comment to that person, and they're like, what was it? I'm like, I'm not going to say. Yeah, I'm not going to say it, but I am going to tell you because I'm wanting you to know the reality that that's here, that's there. And then I leave it at that. And if the kids specifically are like, well, that's a bad thing, right? I'm like, you're right. That and then I start expanding on, well, that person is about to get into huge trouble. And kind of like Layne said, it's punished harshly, but I'm not going to show you the punishment unless you ask about it.
Yeah.
I want you to be aware, but I'm not going to, it's not necessarily my job to describe it all to you in depth.
I had a point initially when I started to go into it, forgot the point while I was talking, and then remembered it as you were talking.
Incredible.
I don't believe that I'm completely down for having things like racism, capitalism, etc. deconstructed in a world. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you are showing people getting away with it with almost no consequences in the world, you are not sending a good message.
Right.
You are not doing what you think you are doing.
Right.
If you have someone that's one of your I'm going to use 5th edition again because it's a good example because Wizards of the Coast is shit. If you have a party member that's a drow and you have a NPC that's being shitty and racist towards them, and gets away with it because it happens in the world, or like you are saying, you're going, yes, there is racism in this game, and that person just got away with it, so it's okay now.
Right.
You might be in the world saying like, yes, he is that one person who's getting away with it, but you have just now shown that there are people getting away with it, that you're not acting out and you are not condemning it.
Yeah.
So you are not sending the message you think you are sending.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
And it's complicated too in Gaylan that you work with kids, because I think especially when working with a mix of kids, right? Like you have white kids and you have, children of color.
No.
And
I'll stop you there. No. Primarily the children that show up for the tabletop games are white boys. There is currently 3 girls. Is there 3? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very one-sided,
Yeah.
and so I'm really using it as a chance to show the white boys,
don't be shitty.
Don't be shitty. Like,
yeah,
that's also why, like,
yeah, and that's one of the things. So in that, you have an opportunity to. Oh, and I cannot remember this woman's name right now, and I am so angry that I can't.
The experiment lady.
Yes, you know who I'm talking about.
I don't know her name, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that teacher.
And so you have an opportunity to have that kind of moment, right? Where you really, because that's the thing is like white kids, part of white privilege is having the privilege of learning about racism as opposed to experiencing it.
Right.
And in this moment of GMing, you have the opportunity to allow them to experience it and be like, this is what it is, and it's awful, and it should be condemned, and we're condemning it at this table as you should in real life, but like this is an experience, and so it's very complicated, right? And like me as a person of marginalized identity, like there are certain things that I don't ever really want to experience in game, and then there are other things that I'm super comfortable like experiencing at the table. And again, it just goes back to like having those consent conversations with your players and with your GM. You really need to know about each other.
Yeah, I've got an example of a time where like the opportunity arise to like where we had to make a hard no, like, nope, we're not going to do this kind of game because we're not going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And what is the LARPing thing? Part of the cops part, the shit. Time traveling cops piece was that whenever we went into a piece of history, we tried to show both sides. So like when it's the ancient Egyptians, that's easy. When it's
Aztec, that was so fun.
Easy. Hannibal versus, Africa, easy. Like you can show both sides and be like, where did this piece of history go wrong and stuff? But there was one time
the kids asked for...
one of the kids was like World War II era, and we were like, nope, we are not going to be showing the multiple other sides of like devil's advocate argument. Like, nope, not doing it.
There are too many things, too many moving parts, too many things going on in World War II, and almost none of the good guys were like truly good. So like maybe we don't.
All of it, like the whole thing just exploded. It was like, no, we're not doing that. At all. We're gonna pick something more happy, like Ancient Blank. Like,
I have kind of a story that kind of segues off of that a little, actually.
Yeah.
It's a kind of like a, when does the GM or like the players or the GM just say hard, no, this situation is not happening? For the first time I ever, like the first game I ever ran for that, I ended up having a hard limit where I went, no, this is not happening. And as of now, this group is not part. I will not be DMing for you anymore. My poor soul. I had to GM for 4 straight white boys.
No.
Sorry.
And capitalized on all of those words. They come to a small kind of outcast town where this is in a very early version of my world, where kind of more of the monstrous outcast races came to just be themselves. This is our little space, and we are defending this against pretty much fucking fantasy Amazon that was trying to get in on it. I'm not gonna lie, that's basically what the like inspiration for it was. It was fantasy Amazon.
Incredible.
And they'd just been doing like smaller things that made me realize they have no fucking empathy with the people who are living in this village whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was lots of smaller little things, and they were getting pissy at me because of their reactions to these things. And I just realized there's this fundamental disconnect between they have never even been in slightly in the position that these marginalized people in any way have been.
Yeah.
And there's 3 instances that really stuck in my mind of what they did. The first one, they were kind of like investigating a cult initially, which is why they were brought here. They had a coin which the cult members used to identify each other. They had it, and one of them just took the coin and started walking through the city center, just twiddling it in his thumbs. This is a known coin, a known symbol of basically racist murderers.
Yikes.
That you now are taking and walking through a town village of marginalized outcast people. So that was number 1, which got the city, like the very high up city guard, who was a level 19 rogue, that just like got them and like, okay, I'm now watching you and I'm now tailing you. Mm-hmm. The second one was when they met the kind of like secretary / like town hall employee that like does a lot of the record keeping for that little village, was a drow guy, and they were immediately like very, very suspicious of him. But when he talked nice to them, they lost that suspicion immediately. So again, that was another strike. And when 4 instances, when they just went up to some fucking random half-orc guard and started grilling him on a cult and saying he was part of this cult with no evidence whatsoever. The like level 19 rogue was like, I've fucking had enough of you lot. You come into this village, you're just being shits to people. And she was ready to just like kill them on the spot there and then. Because she'd been following them and had just watched them do all this shit to people she'd basically been sworn to defend.
Yeah.
So that was the 3rd instance. But the one that really, really just cemented it for me, part of the like preventable things was if they found out who was going through and like kind of fucking things up in the town, they'd be able to stop someone's house from being fireballed. They didn't manage to do that, and the drow woman who got her house / magic store fireballed had only had one thing stolen from it, and it's very clear that that's what they were after the entire time. That the attack was not racially motivated. It is you have made this magic item that we want, and we are going to get it from you by fireball. After the fire had been put out and the entire village was basically like coming around and comforting this one person who just had their house burned down,
Right.
their livelihood stripped away. One of the players stepped up to her as she's crying in the street and says, you know, maybe she did it herself because they're drow and they're like that.
Oh shit.
Oh my fucking god.
Yeah.
I think I would be done with the game at that point too.
At that moment I went, I am not GMing for any of you anymore.
Bye.
I'm done. Go find another GM.
No, and yeah, like we're all allowed to have like that's 100%. We're all allowed to have boundaries and limits, and like sometimes it's a matter of saying, you know, yo, hold up, like that came up against something, you know, let's talk about it, you know, and then let's move the role play on. But something like that, absolutely, like is nope, done. No explanations. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. This game is over.
Yeah.
Like, no, thank you. And like you can run around and say I'm crazy and call me a bitch or what the fuck ever. I don't want to game with people like that. Like I don't want. No.
Ooh, Lord. Well, good for you for setting the boundary and keeping to it.
Yeah. It's a long story, but the punch that hits you at the end it's something.
Man,
wild.
Like, I mean,
that takes the cake. Wow. Yeah.
It
does. Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate that I've not been in positions where I need to draw a line and enforce a hard line because that's just
because you don't play with racists. I'm sorry, but if somebody is going to like no, like that was unprompted. Like you had not set up anything about drow being bad in your in your world, anything. And he goes and says some shit like that. Like, no, you're a racist. You fully embrace this bullshit. Like, you may not recognize that you have, you know, internalized all these racist beliefs, but you have.
That's kind of where it comes back to, again, kind of, we're segueing back to world building. That's kind of where I think a lot of, I'm going to dunk on official D&D again, because...
Go for it.
I like doing that. It's a lot of where people just see something like that and they're so willing to accept it and place these people who are just they it's the classic thing of, they're written that way so it's fine. It's like, no, can't you very clearly see like the harmful stereotypes that this is going to perpetuate out of nothing? Like using the drow and gnolls as an example, because they're the two that I think are most heinous out of it. It is all these elves are fine, except these ones with dark skin that aren't. And people don't see how that's not harmful. Like,
okay,
or in general, still D&D term, you can play a half orc, but you can't play a full orc.
Yeah.
Right. No, listen.
Like, just from basic player's handbook, first 40 pages. Halves are okay, but
yes,
full.
Yes, you can
full
only.
Orcs are bad. You can't do that. But if you're halfy, you're good.
You can only play a half of a character with tribal origins.
Yeah.
Lex, you and I I want to punch something.
I want to, and like, and they get a -2 to intelligence, and their religion largely, when it is addressed, is steeped in violence. The way that orcs are set up in D&D makes me so angry. like the orcs make me incredibly angry. The Gungans from Star Wars make me incredibly angry. There are so many different racial stereotypes slammed together. Like there are things about natives in there. There are things about black people in there. There's so many problematic stereotypes slammed into Gungans. And so that's the thing, right? Is like you have to be careful when you're including these sorts of things in your worlds. And you have to be careful world building in general, especially if you are someone who comes from several layers of privilege. So and we luckily have a couple of different demographics located here in this table talk. But if you take, Nate comes from, Nate is the level of privilege that we aspire
I am
to.
white privilege TM.
Yeah. Gaylan, are you white?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
no, this handsome beard and luscious hair and this sun-kissed look.
I'm Slovak. I'm the darker white, but I'm still.
He's toasted Wonder Bread.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I said that out loud.
No, because I am chai with heavy cream, and you are milk with chocolate syrup in it.
You can see the luminance on my face right now if you're looking at the video.
It's summer in Arkansas. I'm a little darker than normal, but
I'm screaming. Okay, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. That's funny.
No, it gets really confusing. I am totally white passing. I am lighter than my husband, but I'm the ethnic one.
Are you not even spicy white? Are you just
not
white?
As far as I know, I am. Well, and so that so that's something for me. Honestly, why I world build the way I do. Honestly, is I am white. As far as I know, my mom's side is Slovak from Czechoslovakia. My dad's side said they sprung up from
the cornfields
in Kentucky. Do you know where? No, Kentucky, somewhere. So I have no culture. I never had rituals. I never had. I mean, even if with how much I don't want to get on top of or have someone get on top of a soapbox, but even the basic Sunday church ritual, never really had never had any rituals in my life. So I went to games.
Yeah.
So my passion for creating random cultures and any part of it is because I don't have one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So we have, two white men, straight white men. They have the privilege, they have the power, right? And then you have, lesbian, La Dalabine.
I have one exception to this, and that is Tarleton Jaffe. Thank you.
Yeah. Lesbians and their exceptions. I love it. All of them have one. All of them. I don't care. I don't care what they tell you. They do. And then, Joe, a woman of color who is, white passing, and, me, who's very visibly queer, of trans experience, there's, so much different happening here. So we all are probably going to have a different opinion on this. But I am okay with playing in game. If I'm playing a queer character, I'm okay with that character experiencing homophobia if I get to beat the shit out of that person without repercussions. If that person is in the wrong and people celebrate me punishing them, or people punish them before I have to, cool, whatever. If we or if you have a player who wants to, because the thing is people use game for a lot of different things. And a lot of people, especially people who prefer it for the RP, use it to process stuff that is going on in their real life. People use it to process gender feels, sexuality feels, like all kinds of stuff. And so, you know, it becomes part of your task of world building of like, okay, well, like this is something you want your character to experience. How do we fit this into this world?
So kind of going back to Layne's theme of the night of pooing on Wizards of the Coast, I think it's fair to point out the origins within all of that. I might be misinformed, but I mean, straight white male perspective is the foundation of all of those things, and it's still reflective even now. And when someone is coming in and world building in an attempt to be a multidimensional story, things that I see him do all the time, because he wants to include the idea of other cultures and other rituals and aspects. He does the due diligence to research, and I have my own well of knowledge. And so he's always like, how would I put this? Like, how does this work? Like, what's a good book? And and so there's this outside community aspect that there is an easy, especially with the internet, there is an easy way to be sincere and including other cultures to round out your world. But then, I mean, selfish plug again, Coyote and Crow.
Hello.
I'm like,
Please don't shout at my ears. It is 4 a.m.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I just got overexcited.
So Coyote and Crow is coming from like a brand new perspective of like, we're just going to be a cat and push all this bullshit off the table. What is it? What's remaining? And like, let's play in this world and let's imagine in this world, in this setting. And not enough of that really happens, that you have creators from a completely different culture formulating their fantastical mythos around their own selves. And it's
and when it does happen, it doesn't get the attention it deserves, which is why I was so excited to see Coyote and Crow do as well as it did. And when I saw that they broke $1 million, that is right, Coyote and Crow broke $1 million in their fundraising with Kickstarter, which makes them top 5. Top 6. They're number 6. They're top 10. They're number 6 of
most
tabletop RPGs, indie RPGs in the world.
Yeah.
So shout outs to them. They deserve it. But yeah, like most of the time, these perspectives don't get publicity and they don't get out, and that's why I'm so like, that's what I love about my podcast, is I get to bring people of different identities and experiences together to amplify voices that don't usually get to be heard. And that's what I love about what Coyote and Crow is doing, and that's what I love to do in my world building, and what Gaylan apparently loves to do, and what I love to hear.
I mean, it's something where taking Coyote and Crow as an example of like, how would those straight white boys Layne dealt with have dealt with a world like Coyote and Crow, and how, like, would they have been able to, like, cognitive dissonance didn't knock them on the ass, like, would they have been able to manage through that kind of space? And
well, I mean, especially since the creators of Coyote and Crow were like, respectfully, we didn't make any other part of that world. We don't give a shit. Because I loved the question and answer part where someone had asked, like, what is Europe doing inside of your world? Like, I'm very interested academically. And they were like, we didn't make it. We don't care.
We don't care. It's not about them.
Yeah.
That's about this.
That's recentering it on the European white experience. That's not what this is about.
Right. You can make it up, but we didn't.
Yeah.
And like that,
we didn't, and we don't give a fuck.
Like, so I mean, there's this respect that, like, or perspective that you can bring in other cultures if you have the right research, dodge cultural appropriation and have fair and honest conversations with other people around you instead of just white experience interpreting otherness.
Yeah.
Because that's what I think a lot of the damage Wizard of the Coast has done by perpetuating their own decades-old interpretations of the experience of other.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you still have the orcs and
the Vistani.
Wow, God, words.
Yeah.
All those.
There's a lot of mishandling of, what could have potentially been rich storytelling that was just the ball was just dropped. Mm-hmm. This is an opportunity, and I think that's the biggest thing is that here's the opportunity, and you went for like you didn't go for richness, you just went for it's just for flavor.
Their way.
And it literally and it's so annoying because people in fantasy, when they want to have kind of like cultural flavor, a lot of the times they'll just kind of imprint more of the negative stereotypes of other racial groups instead of like actually researching those cultures and like imprinting some of the positive stuff. They just like take all of these like racially motivated stereotypes about Africa and tribal life and imprint that on a race in the fantasy culture. And they just take all of these racial stereotypes about the East and put it on.
Oh my God, it's just hit me with one yuan here.
Yeah, fam. Yeah.
For people that didn't realize, my sudden realization: lizard people, zealots, obsessed with greed and gold.
Yeah.
Literally only just clicked in my head. Because I don't think of shit that way. Like, I'm not gonna.
Well, and it's not something that you experience, so it's not something that you have to. And I love that. And here's the thing: is like I love you, Auntie. Like I love lizard people, snake folk. Like I'm about that shit. But yeah, like it can be super negative. Like Yuan-Ti are like somewhere between anti-Semitic and like Madam Butterfly, like weird, like it's like Yuan-Ti are at once like anti-Asian and anti-Semitic. Like they're.
Well, I mean, it's not that hard to take like I don't know how to say that, but the snake people,
Yuan-Ti,
and just be like, you can take the little tiny details of like they like gold and they like this, and for a fucking different reason, not because it's Asian thing, but for like your own world.
You can literally like it's plentiful. It's a plentiful resource in the land that they're native to, so that it was a common use in not only their jewelry but their home decor.
No, don't you know that Wizards of the Coast wrote it that way, so that's how it has to be. You're not allowed to be creative. You have to follow the rules.
Rules as written, baby.
Oh my God.
One of my favorite stories that I have that I was a player in, which honestly ties up in like 3 or 4 different things that we've been talking about tonight. With one of my good friends, Lewis, we played in what we called the space game. We were playing a crew of a spaceship, and we had corporate espionage and geopolitics and fun stuff. The reveal he did at the end of Act 1 was not only one, that the whole time we couldn't play anything but humans, because the idea was that we were on Earth, or Earth that was, and there were these portals that spaceships could come through, like hyperspace portals, and any alien thing that came through, we shot down. And like it and yeah, it was this weird, like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing about this? We were the fucking bad guys. The entire Earth lied. And like there was this global conspiracy that no one, including the players, because we were trying to play like average people,
right,
were told those are the boogeymen. And then when at the end of Act 1, when we went through the portal and got to a space station where there were like a shit ton of alien spacecrafts, and we finally land and we're like, alien. And they're all like, human boogeymen. And we're like, what? And they're like, you're the evil fuckers who kill every single one of our ships when we send them that way. You're the bad guys.
Yeah.
It was one of the coolest things I'd ever experienced as a player, was that the antagonist was actually us the whole time. And then the whole second act was us having to honestly deal with racism, because they were afraid of us and they hated us. And so we had to convince them to deal with us and like us and stuff. It's awesome. It was so much fun in a different perspective.
That's very neat. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
He is he's Jewish.
Adorable. The entire family is
also
Jewish.
His fun past, like all of our experiences make who we are as GMs. He's one of my favorite GMs because he is very Jewish. He is also a psychiatrist for the VA. Like that's
I bet
that's a lot.
And so like when we were gonna play that game, my first thing was like, I want to play the gun-toting Marine, and he's like, nope, I'm not gonna do that because that's my job. So no, you're not allowed. You have to do something with more depth and less stereotypes.
Yes.
And so like hardline, like all this cool stuff.
I would be fascinated to play with him.
Oh, he's fun.
He's hilarious. He falls asleep a lot.
He works so many weird hours, and
I shouldn't laugh.
He's the player who just falls asleep because we're playing till midnight, and he's like, I get up at 4.
Oh.
So he sits there and tries to paint minis to stay awake. And it just every now and then his head will be on the desk, and we're like, oh, Lewis is out. It's okay.
But yeah, like
sweet baby.
As a world builder, he does very interesting things.
Yeah.
From his experiences, but also like he makes hard lines. He creates really cool stories.
Speaking of bedtimes and hard lines, it is coming up on that time. It is very late / early for Layne.
Thank you, Layne. Thank you.
Thank you for staying up and being a part of this conversation. And thank you, dear listener, for tuning in. And should you want to join the conversation, you can do so in our Discord or on Twitter. Let us know because honestly, there's a whole lot of shit to cover when it comes to GMing. If you want a whole series on this, I'd be happy to do a Lex Talk About It with different guests, with these guys, more with other GM folks. Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know what you want to hear. Everybody, thank you for joining me. Nate, tell me where I can find you. Where are things that you do more things on?
You can find me on Twitter at _Squid Toaster. I am the DM of the Legends of Lanamora podcast at Lanamora Pod. And I do stuff here on Novi Studios. So at Novi _studio on Twitter, or here on the website, you can also check out novistudio.io. There's a lot of very interesting stuff up there as well. And that's going to be where you can find the soon-to-come Lex Talk About It page for more info there and some sweet merch.
Go buy merch, guys.
Yes, it feels gross talking about merch and stuff, but I'm very excited about the Lex Talk About It branded fanny pack. I'm just saying.
Yes, the fanny pack is everything. I am so stoked for it.
Oh my god, I didn't know about this.
Yes.
It hasn't launched yet to you listeners on Twitch right now, but if you're listening to this in podcast form, it is up. And you can get to the shop on novistudio.io.
Yes, guys, go get not to like be that like buy my thing. Like there's gonna be other things on the only thing that I care that you get is this fanny pack. It is incredible. It is 90s as a hell. It is aesthetic as fuck. You have to have one.
That is him. Oh, that's painfully him.
Speaking of him, Gaylan, Joe, where can we find you? Should we want more things from you?
His face. You find me through her. I'm not really on anything.
He lives at the dojo. If he's not home, he's at the dojo.
Carrier pigeon is my thing.
Not the white man living in the dojo. Not that trope.
You're gonna tutor an Asian kid how to do karate.
Oh shit.
Joe's face right now. The utter disappointment in Joe's face.
Okay, look, like I know this situation is cliche. I'm married, Sensei. Like
she was off for teacher.
Gross. You know what? You don't get plugged. Go to bed, sir.
So you can find me at Little Star Girl on Instagram. That'll be the easiest thing and less crazy. Lots of photos of our cats and some.
What is my Instagram?
Kindle.
No, you keep saying it wrong.
Brindle?
Yeah.
Whatever. Fine.
It's very important when you.
But you never post anything.
I don't do anything.
Like the last thing you have posted was when we went to the. Okay.
Anyway.
This is incredible.
Really. Go through
life.
I'll give you my my Instagram, but it's
honestly like so we can cut that. We can cut that for the podcast edit if you want.
So yeah, you can find me at Little Star Girl. I can get in touch with him. Be aware you will see lots of pictures of our cats, tea, and every now and then art that I'm working on. Other than that, the biggest thing that I'm a part of, other than Novi, is a nonprofit I helped found called Solid Stance for Unity and Community. Ooh, long name. You can find us at solidstance.org. We're a bunch of members of the community that want to bring martial arts to children and not disenfranchised. I mean, yeah, but marginalized people. Thank you. Gosh. And so the two biggest projects we're working on right now are scholarships for people to come train and learn about the positive advantages of martial arts in your life, and an after-school care program for a school that such a kick-ass. It is an amazing school, but it works primarily with underprivileged youth. Itty bitties. So
get me the links for that because I want those up on our Discord channel. Lex Fund Change. We have, the Lex Talk About It portion of the Novi Discord community has a channel dedicated to community funds, whether that be mutual aid funds, community aid projects, transitional funds for trans people. Like we've got it all. So just if you are, dear listener, looking for somewhere to do some good, start there in our Discord community and fund change in your either local world or in somebody's personal world. Layne, tell me where we can find more things from you and more things about you.
This is going to be interesting because I'm working on a lot right now. My personal stuff is at Layne the Order on Twitter, where I just post shit. I'm not even going to lie, it's just shit. More professionally, you can find me at Star Harpy Studio on Twitter. And for Novi, okay. I play Hannah Mothwatcher in City and Snow. I'm also working on Mountainsides, the podcast, which you will also find Lex in later on.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe look for me in Legends of Lanmora coming soon.
Maybe. Who knows? Who's to
say? Y'all, we've got the tea on Lex Talk About It. Well, y'all all know that I am so happy to have had all of you here. This was such a fun conversation. It went so many places, and there's so much more we could talk about. If you would be back, I would be happy to have any and all of you.
Yep.
always.
For you, dear listener, you know that you can find me here. You can find me on Novi Studios Twitch every Friday from 4 to about 6 p.m. Where I do playthroughs. You can find me on the future podcast Mountainsides, as well as some other top secret things happening slowly and surely. Dear listener, as always, thank you. And remember that you owe nobody anything except the kindness that you owe yourself.
And me $100.